Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm running a few moments behind, having a few little technical glitches here, but that's okay. Um, just keep rolling, and I'm glad to see you. Whoever you are, I'm glad to see you. I'm Sonia Falayan, and this is my YouTube channel, Mind and Manna, and the channel is designed to center the voices of Black women, 55 years of age and older, who wish to increase their cash flow so that they can have a life that includes more freedom, rest, travel, and ease. And what I would like you to do is to subscribe and like and comment on this channel in this chat. If you happen to catch it later, if you can just indicate that in your comments, I would really appreciate that. I do look for and listen to your comments, respond to them as much as I can, and I use your comments to develop further content. So please listen to the end. And if this uh, channel's topic is something that is of interest to you, please do like and subscribe to it. Please stay to the end. I won't be on here all very long, but there are a couple things that I wanted to talk about today. And I wanted to ask you, the question on the table today is, do you have what it takes to move abroad? Do you have what it takes? So let's talk about a few things that are required and that will allow you to have a great experience if you decide to move abroad or if you decide to take a long sojourn. One of the first things that you have to think about are your finances. Um, Oftentimes, there's the belief that because you move to a cheaper country, you don't have to really think about your finances as much, but that's not true. Um, Oftentimes, people will move to other countries, foreign countries, um, expecting to have the same quality of life or lifestyle or even better, without thinking about what that's going to mean for their finances. And it all depends on where you decide to move. If you decide to move to a place that has a more reasonable cost of living, you more than likely can attain many of the same creature comforts that you have at home without much difficulty, but you still need to budget for them because even in a place such as Mexico, where the dollar does outpace the peso right now, those pesos can expend pretty quickly. So you still have to think about your finances and how you're going to finesse within the system that you have, and you also at some point have to begin to learn how to think in terms of the economic value of the country. So for me, making the shift to think from thinking from dollars to thinking in pesos really helps me to keep my spending in order and to curb my spending and to keep my spending in realistic limits. You certainly want to have a cushion as much as you can, but even just understand that, as with all things, there are going to be those unexpected things that are going to come up, and you'll have to figure out how you're going to navigate those things. Okay, let me see. I guess the other thing that I would want to say is, um, when you do this, do you have the ability to adapt? Are you adaptable? Are you flexible? Um, are you rigid? Do you have to have things a certain way all the time? Are you accustomed to having things run in a certain routine all the time? And these are personality characteristics that have to be considered, and you have to be honest with yourself in terms of, are you flexible enough to bob and weave in terms of transitioning to a new area, learning a new area and culture, and beginning to find ways to fit in and create community. So uh, the question on the table is, the next question is, are you flexible? So the first thing you want to think about are your finances. Um, since I'm talking to women over 55, many women have pensions or are going to expect to get pensions. and Social Security, and that's awesome. But also you have to begin to factor in inflation and what that's, the cost, the high cost of things. My understanding is that there's a lot of jokes right now about the cost of eggs in the United States. But the fact is things are going to go up. So you want to make sure that you can find ways to stay ahead of the inflation and still enjoy the decision that you've made to move. In terms of work, I think it's really important if you're thinking about coming to Mexico to understand that it's best that you not plan on making your income from the Mexican economy. One of the things that the officials look for people moving to Mexico is, can you sustain yourself? Are you able to pay your own way? If you have an emergency, or do you have the means to take care of that emergency? The average cost per day for average workers is $8 a day, which is not a lot of money, obviously. So when I made the decision to move here, I was very, very clear about not wanting to take anything away from the Mexican economy. If anything, my intention is to contribute to it and to eventually hire people to work for me so that I can contribute to the economy. But I also do have the advantage of being here as an artist, as a global coach. I have access to resources and materials that are much more reasonably priced here than they would be in the United States. So the truth of the matter is, as an artist, I can make my money go farther and have access to a more varied range of materials and ways of working with my materials than I would in the United States. So for me, moving to this part of the world, Mexico, which is an arts and textile center, was a good choice for me, but that was part of my decision that I factored in. So you have to factor in for yourself what are going to be the advantages to moving, and are you going to be flexible enough to manage when things don't go the way you would like them to go. So that brings me to the right location. Are you willing to do some research into what the right location would be for you? You have to think about the climate. You have to think about the local customs. You think about your own health. How mobile are you? Many streets, as I've talked about in other videos, are cobblestone streets, especially in the pueblos. It's not an issue in the larger cities, but in these smaller pueblos, towns, there are a lot of cobblestone streets. Some people still ride horses. So do you have the ability to navigate? If you have to have mobility equipment, or is it up to par for traveling on rough streets, sometimes unpaved streets, uneven pavements? So those are some of the things to think about as well. Are you willing to immerse yourself in the community, learn some of the local customs? Are you willing to begin to learn the language? If you're not fluent in the language of the country that you're planning to move to, are you willing to learn the language? Are you willing to say hello, goodbye, how are you, thank you, please, can you help me, can I help you? Are you willing to put in some effort to learn basic language negotiation skills as part of the culture? Are you coming with an attitude where you can appreciate the culture? I have actually heard well-meaning American women say in Mexico, I just don't like Mexican food. I mean, saying this in restaurants. What in the world? What in the world? The food, the language, the culture, the customs, these are what make up the thread of the communities that you're going to be moving into. So if you're not going to be willing to, adapt and understand and have some appreciation for where you are, then that's probably not going to be a good place for you to move to. I know here in Mexico, there's a lot of pride in the food. um, and family life. When food is served, it's served with a certain amount of pride and gusto. It's beautifully appointed. The aesthetics are beautiful. People put in a lot of time and effort to prepare these meals. As in most cultures, there's a lot of love in the food, whether it's soul food or whether it's Jewish food or whatever it is. People put love in the food, and all that the food and the family and the culture and the community represents. So if you know that you don't have an appreciation for those things, then that's something to consider. Um, that may mean that you don't have what it takes to move to a certain area. Um, the other thing I would want to say too is, do you have a plan? Are you willing to do some research? Are you willing to not just ask questions from afar, but are you willing to maybe take a sojourn to figure out and check out an area for yourself? You can't do it all online. You may have, I would advise making a scouting trip or two. If you're coming to Mexico, Mexico is a vast country. There's over 30 countries, large states, um, varied communities and cultures, crafts, foods, different regions. Just as in the United States, the South is very different from New England. New England is very different from the West Coast. The West Coast has different places. The upper Northwest is very different from Southern California. So just understand that if you're planning to come to Mexico, that it's a vast, vast, vast country, many people, many cultural traditions, foodways, folkways. You'll want to be. I guess the thing I'll also say is, again, are you flexible? Can you be patient? Can you be patient? Another thing that, it's almost stereotypical, but this is another thing I want to say. In Mexico, there is such thing as Mexican time. Black people of color have a different relationship to time. Time is something that we move through, and it's no different here in Mexico. I can't tell you how many times I've heard American people say, they said they were going to be here at 5 o'clock, and it's now 5:15. It's now 5:20. Part of the local custom is that many of the locals would rather not come than to say, or to be embarrassed or to disappoint you by saying, I can't make it on time. Now that's a cultural difference, but it is what it is. So understand that every culture is going to have its own way of doing things, is going to have its own relationship to time. And we can either fight and complain about it, or we can stay home, or we can learn how to adapt. Bureaucracy and red tape is something that you're going to encounter at some point in time. Again, the question is, how flexible can you? How flexible are you? How flexible will you be? Also, can you handle unexpected changes, choices? Are you flexible? Are you going to be able to move without getting too far off your station, without getting too psychologically and emotionally upset? For me, the challenges have been around banking. I've lost my debit card a couple of times, or recently I've had fraud on one of my debit cards. So I've had to have, my cards shipped to me, or I have to have them shipped to my address in the United States, and I have to have it shipped back to me here in Mexico. And some of the banks will send my cards directly to me in Mexico. Well, one of them will, but most of them won't. Thinking about just understanding that even in your best planning, there's going to be that one area or those couple areas that you just had no way of anticipating. So be flexible. So ask yourself these questions. Do you have what it takes to move abroad? Do you have a financial means of sustaining yourself? I just want to make sure I can go back and review. Okay. Oh, sorry. Do you have a do you have a financial way of getting things accomplished? Are you going to be able to be comfortable where you move to? Are you going to be able to adapt where you're going to move to? Um, have you considered how you're going to make additional income? And I would say even people that have a pension, and unless you have a really um, large pension that's going to outlast inflation, you're going to want to consider some ways to bring in residual income or passive income to kind of pad and boost what you have coming in, to boost your Social Security and or your pension. Um, you want to think about the right location, the climate, what the local foodways and folkways are. In Mexico, there are a lot of celebrations, lots of celebrations and festivals. It's a noisy culture. There's fireworks going off. There's, as I think you heard earlier in this video, you heard a ringing sound. That's the garbage collection truck. Everything has sound and noise. There's speakers. Um, um, you know, does your personality fit in with that kind of cultural arrangement? And have you been thinking about a plan to get where you want to go to? So do some scouting around. Be willing to make a scouting visit before you make a final decision. That's really important. Go beyond just asking questions online and reading a book. Take some time and make the investment to actually make some short trips to see how a place might fit for you. All right. So again, thank you again for watching this morning. I'm Sonia Folayan, and I do help women 55 and above who want to improve their finances so that they can level up to a more intentional way of freedom, rest, travel, and ease. And this is the Mind and Manna channel, and it's called Mind and Manna because I really believe that what we focus on expands, and I also believe that God provides something for us every day. All right, so thank you so much. See you next week.